that just today, European border guards arrived at the Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt. So they've been gone for nearly 20 years. Now they're back. So this is what Israel controlled the Gaza Strip until 2005. They handed it over to the Palestinian Arabs then, with the Israeli military even forcibly removing their own people from their homes. You had video footage of the IDF going into Gaza to drag out Jews so that they could hand it over to the Palestinians. And of course, these are the same soldiers that get accused of ethnic cleansing and a whole lot of nonsense. But that withdrawal from Gaza, one of the issues with that was, how do we control the border with Egypt? Because if the they didn't want to have Israeli soldiers still stationed at that Rafah border crossing with Egypt. But if you hand that over to the Palestinians, well, then there's no oversight. They could bring in whatever weapons they want from Egypt. Not a great situation. So in stepped the one party apparently considered fair and unbiased by everyone involved, the European Union. And the EU dispatched about 70 border guards. It was EU BAM. I don't know if they say it like that. The European Union Border Assistance Mission. I'm going to call it EU BAM because that's much quicker than saying EU BAM. But they came over there and they would watch the border. Now, this very quickly fell apart. 2007, Hamas took control of Gaza. Egypt closed the border. The Egyptian monitors fled. And then the border crossing kind of has changed over the years since then. It was closed. The Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt. It opened again. It's kind of been on and off. But the EU BAM, the European border monitors, have been gone for about 20 years. And then on Friday, they're back. And this is an important story. When we first wrote on this, when this first happened back in 2005, Mr. Joel Hilliker, the Trump managing editor, had an article, and he wrote, "This compromise marks a watershed moment for both Israel and Europe." He also wrote that the plain truth is that toothless European observers will not provide the security guarantee Israel needs. The uselessness of the compromise agreement will quickly become obvious. I mean, yeah, that definitely happened. Sterner steps will be necessary, and quite soon. Trumpet readers should expect Europe's role to grow. So that was back then. Now we're seeing, as these border guards come in, they're coming in armed. So Germany is particularly useful for watching this because they have restrictions about what weapons they're allowed to have. And so their 2005 cabinet decision that authorized the initial deployment of border forces as part of this EU mission, authorized unarmed observers. They're amending that, according to DPA, Deutsche Presseagentur, to have them be armed border guards now. So this time around, they'll have at least some teeth. It's still going to be small. We're still looking about the same rough ballpark number of people, maybe about 70. But it's a step up. They're now going to be armed. And I think it establishes that after 20 years, Israel and the Palestinian Arabs, they both continue to look to Europe and Germany as peacemakers in the region. And even Donald Trump. I mean, this is part of the ceasefire deal that Donald Trump pushed Israel to make. And it's having Europe come in and Germany come in. I mean, that seems to show that his administration, too, is happy to see Europe playing the role as peacemaker. So we're really opening the door now for Europe to play a much bigger role here. And this is something that the Trumpet editor-in-chief, Gerald Flurry, forecast right from the start of this. So after October 7th, he had a cover article on the Trumpet print. The cover, I think it was the whole Trumpet, it had the yellow cover with the German eagle on there. And the title was something like, "As you watch Gaza, watch Germany." And in that, he said that the most important development after the October 7th massacre is being overlooked completely by most people. And he said the most shocking problem in the Middle East is not what is happening in Gaza, but what is happening with Germany. And a little later, he said, "Germany is building its diplomacy and its military in preparation to intervene in the Middle East in ways that will shock the world." And we're seeing this is just one more way they're intervening. I mean, there's so much you could think about that article being proved correct. You look at what has happened with Syria falling since then, and then the way that Europe is stepping into Syria. I mean, I'll just jump in ahead to one of these smaller stories I was going to bring up, where we've even had some more news from Europe and Syria this week, where there was a big EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels earlier in the week, and they agreed a roadmap for lifting sanctions on Syria, sanctions on energy, transportation, financial institutions. These will all be lifted to make it easier for the new Syrian government to access foreign funds. So they're getting more involved in Syria. You've got Lebanon now with a European-friendly president, European-friendly prime minister. They're moving into Europe's orbit. Exactly what Mr. Fleury wrote has happened. But all of this revolves around some very, very specific Bible prophecies. And Daniel 11 articulates so many of these. Daniel 11 and verse 40 to 45 talks about an end-time clash between a European-led king of the north and a radical Islamist king of the south. And verse 45 states that this king of the north will set up its headquarters in the glorious holy mountain. This European power is very concerned about Jerusalem and what goes on there. And how does it do that? Well, verse 41 of Daniel 11 says that they shall enter also into the glorious land. And the Hebrew word for this word, enter, implies peaceful entry, not forced entry. It's not describing an invasion. They come in there. They're invited in there. In his book, The Eternal Has Chosen Jerusalem, Mr. Fleury wrote, the Germans will undoubtedly be invited in as a peacekeeping force. And there's so many scriptures that talk about this, that talk about Europe as a counterfeit peacemaker in the Middle East. And so that's why 70 border guards, they're not going to be marching in Jerusalem with 70 border guards armed with handguns. Like, that force itself is not going to shake the Middle East. But this principle of Europe being invited in as peacemakers, and we're seeing that Israel, that we're seeing the Palestinian Arabs, we're seeing that the Donald Trump administration are all A-okay with that, that is massive. And like I said, there's so many scriptures that talk about this. So Daniel 8 and verse 25 is a parallel scripture talking about the strong man that leads this king of the north. That says that he shall cause craft to prosper. And that it says that word craft, it could mean deceit or fraud. And then it says he shall by peace destroy many. Their leader has these fraudulent peace pacts and uses them to destroy. I mean, there's so many scriptures about this. I was looking into this. I found this clip I'm quite excited to play for you. This is from Mr. Armstrong in 1941. I think it's one of the oldest sound bites I've ever found from him. And he's talking about the way that peace pacts will be used to deceive. I mean, we're breaking into the context a little bit, but he cites just some of the scriptures that talk about this and this fraudulent use of peace pacts. This is clip 4.
But one thing is certain, according to Bible prophecy, the time is yet coming when, as we read in 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter, they will proclaim and shout peace and safety. That message will go out, and peace and safety will be proclaimed to the world, as we find it described in 1 Thessalonians, the 5th chapter. Let me read you just the first 6 verses. There's only one way that you can know what is going to happen in the world, and that is from the Bible prophecy. And so here Paul says, yourselves know, you know perfectly, that the day of the Lord, notice he's speaking of the day of the Lord so cometh as a thief in the night. For when they, now not you, but they, that is those who are not converted, not God's people, the people of the world, the nations of the world, when they shall say peace and safety, as the world will proclaim, then, notice, sudden destruction cometh upon them as travail upon a woman with child, and they shall not escape. Now, the day of the Lord is a time of destruction sent from the Almighty. I'll read you in just a moment some of the other texts describing this day of the Lord and what it is. But the day of the Lord is coming like a thief in the night, and when the nations cry peace and safety, then this sudden destruction of the day of the Lord will come upon them, upon these nations, as travail upon a woman with child, and they, the nations, shall not escape.
So he was talking in 1941, and there was a lot more in that broadcast, and he was talking about how Germany would use peace and safety and talk of peace and safety to do this and to bring this about. This is something then that Mr. Fleury has followed on and warned a lot about. This is a clip from him from 2012. We could play that now, clip 5.
Well, if you want to look at Daniel 11, verses 40 and 41, you will see that this country I mentioned earlier called Assyria is going to lead Europe into the promised land, into Jerusalem, and they will enter in, it says, and there's nothing to indicate that's through warfare. They're just invited in, apparently to protect them, and certainly they're going to get control of those nuclear bombs, regardless of what happens with Britain.
There's so many scriptures that talk about this. Jeremiah 30 and verse 14, Ezekiel 16 and verse 3, the whole first half, or a whole lot of Ezekiel 23. They talk about the people of Israel, including the Jews, trusting in foreign lovers for their defense. Like all of these biblical writers writing hundreds of years, in some cases thousands of years apart, warned about this European power coming in peacefully through a fraudulent peace process. In Hosea chapter 5, that particular key of David was called the profound secret of Hosea 5 and verse 13. And that's an even more specific warning, talking about when Judah sees his wound. When you look in the Hebrew, it's talking about, well, Judah sees its wound and he goes to Assyria, who that you heard from Mr. Flurry. That's referring to modern day Germany, as we've said for a long time. And you look at this word wound, and it's kind of like the cure is the wound, the remedy is the wound. In this case, the peace process is the wound. This handing over land to Palestinian Arabs is the wound. Israel sees that. Like they're seeing after October 7th. Hey, we gave the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Arabs. We pulled our own people out. And then they used that to launch an attack on us. That whole approach is a wound. It doesn't lead to peace. And so they see that. And they fix it not by turning to God, though, but by turning to Germany. And it's a trap. I mean, this is what we're seeing building right now. That's why I think just this small number of border guards is so significant. You are going to see this expand. You're seeing Europe now getting more involved in the peace process. I think they know they can't look after, they can't really protect 70 border guards in the midst of the chaos that is Gaza. So very quickly, there's going to be the next logical step might be to say, well, we need to send in some soldiers to protect this area. But the Bible reveals more than this just being a deadly trap. It shows that all of these events in and around Jerusalem are just a pivotal for the whole world, that this double cross is part of a major chain of events that is going to bring the world right to the brink of that nuclear midnight that we were just talking about with Jeremiah. I mean, the same verse in Daniel 8 and verse 25 that talks about craft to prosper and peace to destroy many, talks about this strong man standing up against Jesus Christ himself and being destroyed. That Jesus Christ is going to be the sending of peacekeepers to the Middle East. It's part of that chain of event that leads to the return of Jesus Christ, bringing real and genuine peace to the whole world. So that is the inspiring, the exciting part of this story. In our free book, The Eternal Has Chosen Jerusalem, will explain all of this in much more detail, and more importantly, put all of these events in the clear context of God's plan for mankind.